good morning. It's the 24th day of March 2018, a beautiful, rainy, drizzly Saturday morning, and we're thankful for the showers this morning. This is New Day, Saturday edition. Welcome to the show. My name is Abna Tebi. As usual, we're coming to you live from the studios of TV3 here in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're streaming live around the world online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. The show runs from now till 9:50, where conversations are brought to a close. But as usual, we encourage you to send through your comments, your contributions, whatever it is on your mind regarding the outlined topics for today's discussion. Send them to our WhatsApp number 050-0607-070, and we will be happy to share them with the rest of the world. Today on the show, we are looking at a number of things. We'll start off with the Bank of Ghana taking over the management of UniBank. Now, this week, news broke of the Bank of Ghana taking over the management of UniBank, and this news came some 7 months after the takeover of UT Bank and Capital Bank by the Ghana Commercial Bank at the instance of the Bank of Ghana. Now, this recent takeover came along with the appointment of an official administrator to rehabilitate the UniBank and return it to regulatory compliance, thus saving UniBank from imminent collapse, a situation quite distinct from the takeovers of UT Bank and Capital Bank, which were declared deeply insolvent and therefore had their licenses revoked by the Bank of Ghana in August of last year. We shall be discussing the events leading up to the takeover of UniBank by Bank of Ghana, the matters arising, and the developments in the banking sector generally, which should be of concern to all of us. Also up for discussion is Parliament's approval of GNPC's 2018 work programme and matters arising. Now, Parliament on Thursday approved the 2018 work programme of the GNPC, but the approval didn't come without questions from the minority. The projected expenditure for the year's work programme was some $986.13 million, but the approval was for $356.43 million. Now, the GNPC has made the headlines this week as the minority in Parliament has sought to question some expenditure lines in there. For instance, the minority has questioned the allocation of $20 million to the construction of GNPC's new head office in Accra. The sum of 13.4 million Ghana cedis is also set to have been allocated to the refurbishment of GNPC's current head office in Tema, and that has also been questioned. And what happened in Parliament this Thursday was reminiscent of what happened in Parliament in 2016, when the 2016 work programme of GNPC was considered. Same sentiments from the minority side, then the NPP. They also, at the time, questioned how an amount of 40 million Ghana cedis could have been used to renovate GNPC's petroleum house. So from all indications, one thing is certain: the GNPC has never had its, perhaps in recent times, has never had its work program approved without questions about some expenditure lines, which, depending on which side of the divide you're on, would be considered as perhaps wasteful expenditure or going outside the GNPC's core mandate. So the GNPC will be in focus on the show this morning, and we'll be looking at how that will pan out in terms of the 2018 work program. Also up for discussion is a defense cooperation agreement between Ghana and the United States of America. What is the fate of this agreement? It's yet to be known, as the minority in Parliament is dead set to ensure that the agreement is not approved. At a press conference on Wednesday, the Minister of Defense, Mr. Dominic Nituwul, explained that the U.S. government was making a request for Ghana to be a base for staging and deploying forces based on two earlier memoranda signed in February 1998 and April 2015. Now, the memoranda currently, which has already been approved by Cabinet, is before Parliament seeking a ratification of the agreement. But even before it comes up for voting, the minority has strongly signaled their rejection of the agreement on the basis that, among other things, the agreement undermines the sovereignty of Ghana. Now, the question on my mind is, if indeed there were some previous memoranda signed in 1998 and 2015 in respect of similar arrangements, if those did not undermine the sovereignty of Ghana back then, how will the MOU currently being discussed, or the agreement currently before Parliament to be ratified, how will this one undermine the sovereignty of Ghana? We shall be looking at the nature of this agreement and the concerns that have been raised so far. Lastly, we'll turn our attention to the RTI bill and matters coming from that sector. So finally, it has been laid before Parliament, and that was yesterday. This would appear to be in accordance with what the President assured the nation in his speech at the 61st Independence Day anniversary celebration. But this is not the first time that the RTI bill has been laid before Parliament. So let's not get ahead of ourselves yet. Let's see what can be done to ensure that it's actually passed. We hope that it actually comes into light and it's passed into law. At this point, we'll take a break. When we come back, I will introduce the panelists for today's conversations, and we'll get straight into conversations for today's discussion. You're watching New Day Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're live around the world streaming online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. I'll quickly introduce the panelists for today's conversation. I'll start from my extreme left, where we have Mr. Joe Jackson. He is a Director of Operations at Daylex Finance. He is a finance person. Next to him is Mr. George Lowe. He is a lawyer and a former MP for North Dai constituency. Next is Mr. Yao Opong. He is a lawyer and a lecturer at the Central University College. Last but not least is Mr. Obi Amwa, Honorable MP for Ekwapim South constituency, and he also doubles as the Deputy Minister for Local Government and Rural Development. A very good morning to you, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Look at quick correction. Well, I'm no more at Central.
Oh.
And two, it's no more at the college.
Very well. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I think I don't know why I keep saying that, but
that's fine.
Thanks for that. Yes. Okay. So it's good to have you here on a rainy morning.
Yes.
Yes.
You took your time to come here. We're very grateful for that. And I think you were very much on time, given that it even rained. Because usually, even sunny days, we don't usually have an early turnout, but we're truly grateful. But we'll start off, I think I introduced the UniBank story as well, we'll start with, but we'll start off rather with the Defense Cooperation Agreement, which was passed yesterday by Parliament, but of course, the minority staged the walkout, so it was the majority that carried the process through. The agreement ratified, and with the ratification of the agreement, the U.S. has granted U.S. military personnel, defense contractors, and agents, among other executive officials, unrestricted access to Ghanaian facilities for military and humanitarian purposes, a situation many fear will compromise the sovereignty of the country. And indeed, that was one of the bases the minority strongly opposed this agreement. We'll be looking at how events, panned out on the floor of Parliament yesterday, but we do know that going into yesterday, there was so much opposition to this from the minority and, of course, some, civil society groups. So I'll start with Honorable Obi Amwa, who was in Parliament yesterday, to tell us exactly how that went. We can't take out the fact that, of course, that the opposition to this is really strong, and perhaps for some genuine reasons.
Very well. Thank you so much, and good morning to you and fellow panelists. Well, as you said yesterday, we had to ratify the agreement between the government of Ghana and the United States of America regarding the status of U.S. forces in Ghana and the use of agreed facilities. Okay. And then the, what they call the cooperation agreement. But, of course, before yesterday, a lot of discussions had gone on. Some of them very misinformed, some of them too deliberately mischievous, and then some of them just plain, outright misinformation. Thankfully, we have records. The records are everywhere, and some of them, we were told yesterday by the defense minister that some of them, they didn't even have access to them. Strangely and so sad that they couldn't, the Minister for Foreign Affairs couldn't find an agreement which was purported to have been executed in 2015 under the NDC government. And they had to rely on even their counterparts to produce a copy for them. But the general thing is that this was an agreement. There had been negotiations and discussions. They had gone to cabinet. Cabinet had looked at it. The military had their own team which engaged in these negotiations. I have the list of those who were involved here. And then, after cabinet approving it, the decision by the president was that this is an agreement which has to be ratified by Parliament under Article 75(2). So it should come to Parliament. So it came to Parliament, and it was referred to a joint committee, Defense and Interior, and then Legal and Constitution. Interestingly, I picked the votes and proceedings for Tuesday, 20th March, and Thursday, the last day of the meeting of the joint committee. And if the records will show, it appears that even the NDC members were more than the MPP members. These are the records, votes and proceedings. For the Thursday one, if you were to talk about majority, the majority was the NDC. So the report was submitted to Parliament. We went through the report. You heard a little commotion. Of course, before even very early in the morning, our friends on the other side were in all sorts of red bands at different parts of their bodies. Some on the head, some on the leg, some as captain's band. So they appear to be in the mood to really fight this matter. And we had been following and briefed enough to also make our say. Eventually, and unfortunately, after all the noise in quotes, our friends said they could not stay to debate this matter because, according to them, Article 75(2) had not been followed. But what does 75(2) say? It's very clear that either the president to execute or under his authority, then it should come to Parliament. If I be permitted, it's just a short provision. Execution of treaties. 75(1). The president may execute or cause to be executed treaties, agreements, or conventions in the name of Ghana. 2. A treaty, agreement, or convention executed by or under the authority of the president shall be subject to ratification by A, Act of Parliament, or B, a resolution of Parliament supported by the votes of more than 1/2 of all the members of Parliament. So they had brought it to Parliament for this to be done. And so in the course of debate, we were made aware.
So quick question, Honorable. Are you saying that the minority's walkout was because of a procedural issue and not because of what the content of the agreement?
No, the minority didn't even tell us their position. Beyond the minority leader speaking and saying that he doesn't think that we have complied with 75(2), so they don't want to be part of it. That was his explanation. He didn't say that A, B, C, D would infringe on our sovereignty or A, B, C, D is illegal. The only thing he said was that 75(2) talks about a president. So we were insisting that it's either the president or under the authority of the president. So it's not that they even pointed out the flaws in the agreement. What they said was that procedurally, they think they would not be part of it. And before then, the ranking member wanted to make a point, which generated that kind of commotion. And if you look at our standing orders, it's very clear. Unless a motion is moved and seconded, you can't jump in and say that you want to correct a report. And the main thing that he wanted to do was the fact that it should be on record that not all of them agreed, but the majority. So they should make correction on the report. Correction regarding the fact that they had the committee, the chairman of the committee had not stated that majority agreed, but had said that the committee making it unanimous. But if you say majority, that means a certain consensus. That's why I was referring to the fact that even if you said majority, the NDC were more than the MPP at the committee stage. And they approved it. And the votes of proceedings confirm it. So eventually when that head was cleared, the stage was set for debate. Then they walked out. But when they walked out, we continued the debate. And the issues came out very clearly that in 1998, an agreement had been entered into between government of Ghana and the US on this same matter. I have a copy of the 1998 agreement here. Fast track 2015, the Foreign Affairs Minister executed an agreement on these same lines, but with even more stringent conditions for Ghana hosting the Americans. MPP comes to power, the US government approaches MPP, the defense minister, we have series of correspondence between the parties. The defense minister tells them what the government wants, what we find wrong with the 2015 agreement. And then they say that, fine, let's set up negotiation teams and see how best we can arrive at this thing. And if you are more comfortable sending it to Parliament, so be it. It's your country and it's your constitution. And if you permit me...
But really, it shouldn't be a matter of being comfortable. That's what it should be. You need to...
Yeah, that's been our position all along. That's why Gitmo 2...
Right.
That's why Gitmo 2, we insisted. And even went to the court, and the Supreme Court agreed with us. What I'm saying is that in 2015, most people didn't even know that we had such an agreement.
Yes, and that's something I would want to, turn to Honorable George Lowe on.
So if you let me end by
just... Right.
Because those are the critical things that appear to be worrying people, and then which appears to muddy this whole arrangement in the discussion.
Yeah.
In the first place, even though this is not color, where they operate from the US base, where they operate, exercise operation support area, primary parking area, primary runway, where they will use, they've all been certified, confirmed, and then...
that's in the 98?
No.
Which one is it? The 2015?
2015, no, not 2015, this present one.
Very well.
We've agreed on where they will even operate, and we've attached it to the agreement. And as I said, if you read the correspondence, just one from the highest representative here, it says, this agreement neither establishes nor seek to establish a U.S. military base in Ghana. The agreement will cover our existing military cooperation and new initiatives such as the West African Logistics Network and assistance related to Ghana's participation in Exercise United Accord 2018. In fact, the U.S. government is unable to advance plans for these initiatives without a response to our request for the DCA. So, this is from Robert P. Jackson, the ambassador.
Yes,
he wanted to be emphatic that indeed this is not a military base that people in Ghana are talking about, or some want the whole world to believe. This is not, this is just a DCA.
But Honorable, quickly, there are those who are also saying that, yes, that may be the case.
Yes.
You have it there stated. But then, if you're looking at the content of the agreement, the kind of concession exactly that are being given to the forces, I mean, some would say if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it is a duck. You don't necessarily need to be told that this is it. You're putting two and two together.
There are those who never want to be convinced. Those ones, sorry, there's very little I can do. Let me say that in December 2015, this is from Americans themselves, in December 2015, the U.S. government proposed the DCA as a way to facilitate a closer relationship between our two militaries and elevate our partnership. That's what you're saying. This is what they've outlined what the two parties seek to gain. Indeed,
well.
the Ghana
again,
side.
speaking of the two parties, what each side is to gain. Again, the question comes in: isn't it a bit lopsided? Isn't Ghana not necessarily benefiting as much, or isn't US benefiting more? Look at the kinds of access we're giving them: unfettered access to certain critical areas and all of those.
Access. Please.
But what we'll be looking at those further details.
I agree with you. You are playing a devil's advocate. But
all
the documents that we need to interrogate, they are here.
Very well.
Ready to hand them over to
Honorable, we'll look into that. But I think before we move on, I want us to first establish whether or not indeed there was that. Honorable has said that, not to doubt him, but Honorable, you're also here, Honorable George Law, the 98 agreement and the 2015 agreement, those were there.
Well, good morning, and good morning to our cherished viewers, and my greetings to our co-panelists. Interesting times. 1998 agreement is not in doubt. 2015, there was an agreement. But I find it very, very, very interesting that nobody is talking about what
the content of it.
The content of the 2015. And indeed, I find it more scandalous this morning that it is said that the Ghana side does not have a 2015 agreement. And yet, from day one, they've been talking about the 2015 agreement. So what were they talking about?
No, nobody said that.
Please. When you have, you see,
but
that agreement.
The point is, it still doesn't take away the fact that there is a 2015 agreement.
So what are we talking about? Go to the parliamentary, the report. The report didn't make mention of a 2015 agreement. Go to the parliament.
Which report?
The report that was presented to Parliament, for which the report was. It talked about the 1998 agreement, and then jumps onto the 2018 agreement.
But for the agreement itself, reference is made to the 2015 agreement.
You see, let's be very, it says, look, the committee observed that this agreement is an enhancement over the 24 February 1998 exchange of notes in certain areas per Article 15. You see, and then talks about unimpeded access and over. So this 2018 is an enhancement over the 1998.
And the 2015.
Please. I am saying that these are the same people who are saying that. We don't have a copy of the 2015.
We didn't see it.
Oh, please.
They've gotten a copy
from the other side.
You see, it's even more
from the other side.
Listen, it's even more scandalous.
No, you see, but the point is,
you see,
they said, rightly honorable said, to make available. Well, there's a copy here.
Listen.
Gentlemen, just take it easy. Honorable, carry on.
You see, let's first of all understand that this is a security agreement.
Yes.
When you sit in Parliament, there are agreements that the foreign minister may execute on behalf of the country, even though it is not necessarily a foreign agreement. You understand? What effort has the government, the Ministry of Defense made? All are living, we have several past ministers of defense alive. Is there anybody, are they saying in any way that they actually have looked for the 2015 report, or that they assume that it doesn't exist?
You know what, Honorable? The point is...
No, it is not triviality.
No, just a minute.
I think we need to... Honorable Obiama is not the first NPP person to go and sit on radio or TV and give the indication that people have carried the documents and they can't find it.
Yes, but... Very. The point is, Honorable, please. The point is, let's not focus so much on this. Otherwise, it takes away from the conversation. Let's establish it. There's a 2015 agreement. Yes or no? There is.
2015 agreement which comes in the nature of diplomatic notes.
Same as the Gitmo one.
Yes, because
which had to be ratified nonetheless.
Because diplomatic notes had always remained a genuine way of doing business in this country until the Supreme Court said
exactly.
So nobody should give the impression that because it wasn't carried and brought to Parliament, there was something wrong with that.
But it had to have been ratified.
Diplomatic notes are ratified. That is why our minister signs on behalf of the country.
But that isn't ratification.
It is.
That's execution.
Please. You see, when you are executing documents.
That's execution.
Listen, when you are executing documents, there are various ways of doing it. He himself said the Constitution gives the president the power to do so on behalf or
to execute. But
Yeah,
when
please,
he comes back, it
you
needs
see,
to be ratified
yes,
by Parliament.
Because until our Supreme Court interpreted in a certain way, the convention had been internationally from time immemorial. We've always had note verbal.
Are you suggesting that the Supreme Court's ruling on
I am
the
saying
gateway
that
to
we have
departed from a certain...
We have appointed a Supreme Court. We have agreed that when they rule, it is final.
Yes.
Basic.
Very
so
well.
We go
Let's just move on. So there is a 98 agreement, there is a 2015.
And the report is saying that this is an enhancement over the 1998 and possibly the 2015. So from day one, the committee itself that this cannot be said to be a 2015 agreement. Because you see, the argument has always been that, oh, we've already in this agreement, we've already entered this is a new agreement, a totally new agreement.
But having a link to
I am saying
those.
that it's an enhanced. So
Yes.
if I'm giving you 5 CDs, now I'm giving you 50 CDs. And we are saying that it is the 50 CDs that Ghanaians are against, and not the 5 CDs.
But
let's
Honourable,
put that in perspective.
Very well. But the point is, it's an enhancement.
Yes.
But then I think where people, and myself included, are interested when it comes to this issue is the seeming turnaround then, to make it seem like this is the current agreement that was ratified is the first time. I think we need to get into that.
That is not the case at all.
Because the issue about this agreement is going to undermine
That
the
is not-
sovereignty
yes,
of Ghana.
The committee. Go back
In
to
other
the
words, the
committee's report.
2015.
I'm saying that go back to the committee's own report. Committee's own report says that for them, it appears as though this agreement, part of this agreement, would cede the sovereignty of Ghana. It's there in that report. So
we'll be looking
yes,
at that.
So
But
at the close of the day, the committee itself has put it out there that so far as they are concerned, their observation is that there's a possibility that we would lose our aspect of our sovereignty over this agreement. And it is that reason why Ghanaians are up in arms. It is for that reason that the NDC will say that they don't want, or the minority in parliament will say that we don't want to be part of that. They haven't said anywhere that even though they've had access to the 2015, that it gave away our sovereignty. Has anybody said that? But we are saying that, yes, this one we have seen. Ghanaians, all Ghanaians have seen, they've taken it to parliament, it's public document. And Ghanaians feel that if this is what you are giving, then please, you are giving away our sovereignty. And we don't agree. And that is the reason why people had to be locked out of parliament yesterday. Masses of Ghanaians don't agree. Okay? They don't agree. The minority in parliament representing a large chunk of people don't agree. And
that you decided to walk out.
of course, we don't want to be part of it. We don't want to be part of it. So clearly, if we are representing people who we know are not happy about what is happening, why should we stay there and pass it?
Very
So clearly, I mean, let's get these things in perspective. One, what we are saying really is that there could have been a 98 agree, or there was.
There is, not there could have.
2015,
there
there is. We are saying the 2018 one is not what was in the 1998 or 2015. Yeah. It is a totally different thing where they've given away far more. Far more. Yes, that the two agreements.
But the two previous agreements gave somewhat nonetheless.
But when if they gave,
it gave something nonetheless.
They gave something. But did those constitute giving away our sovereignty?
Well, that is another matter for discussion. But let me move to Mr. Joe Jackson. What do you make of all of this? Previous agreements being in existence and then this one coming in to be an enhancement of sorts.
First of all, let me say hello to all my listeners. It's been a while, but it's good to be back. Mm-hmm. You know, there are two things that worry me on this whole process. Number one was that there seems to be a new agreement. One of the things would be interesting to know is what are the differences, and do those differences constitute the enough for us to go up in arms. In any case, even if there was an existing agreement, we are at liberty to say this is a new agreement and we want to examine it. I find it though a bit hypocritical on this back and forth And it's again the same old partisan politics, the same old tossing us back and forth. When it even becomes difficult to tell what is the truth and make a judgment. But there are several things. One, there is concern on Ghanaians about this new agreement. That you cannot hide. I take issue with the minority for walking out. If you walk out, how do you defend my interest? If I'm concerned and you are my parliamentarian and there's an opportunity, at the very least, we have to give MPP credit for bringing this agreement into the open. Hold on.
You don't have a choice.
Well,
no, but the previous one,
but the Supreme Court's ruling, they don't have a choice. That is it.
No,
after the Supreme Court's ruling, they don't have a
but
choice.
why don't you allow me to
yes.
get
Oh no, I'm just pointing.
But you
out.
see,
Go on.
Honorable Mr. Jackson, before you carry on, I think the Supreme Court only declared what the law is, and we should have complied with that back in '98 and 2015, given that we had agreed to take this constitution
at
as our
least
guide.
they are in compliance with the
They don't
law
have a choice.
now, at the very least. The issue is simply, for me, it's just, there's a lot of hypocrisy and sometimes plain mischievousness in this process. Listen, Ghanaians are unhappy, a lot of Ghanaians, and the sentiment was clear, unhappy about it. If you walk out, you don't protect my interest. You don't protect my interest. And we have the same issue of when it's your turn, everything else is bad. And we're tired of this. We're tired of this. Switch it around. Gitmo, what is happening? Today we'll talk about the RTI bill. Same thing. You talk about, and you have this ping pong ball for which the public is being played between the two parties. And it's tiring, you know. It is very tiring. Are we concerned about our sovereignty? Yes. But the argument is hard to even determine what is the real fact, because both parties are just plain mischievous. I gave you credit. I gave the NPP credit for bringing the matter out into the open. But at least there are some things I would like to have heard from you. What is the difference between this new agreement and the old agreement?
Mr. Jackson, hold your thoughts there. We need to take a break. When we come back, you continue, and then definitely Mr. Opon will come in as well. You're watching the New Day Saturday edition. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. This is New Day Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're live online around the world at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. Just before the break, we're looking at the Defense Cooperation Agreement that was ratified yesterday by Parliament, which agreement will bring or will see some the U.S. forces being granted access to certain areas and other concessions that have been given. We're looking at the agreement dating back, or which has its roots in some previous agreements in from '98 and 2015. Mr. Jackson was making his submissions. We'll go back to him to wrap up on that, and then we can carry on. Yes.
There are a number of legitimate concerns, in my opinion. One is that, I don't know, call it a base, don't call it a base, whatever it is, there's a presence. And once there's a presence, in the current dispensation of the world that we are in, it could be an object of attack. And we've seen it in other countries. So there is legitimate concern.
Definitely.
There's legitimate concern as a Ghanaian that where this presence that you have here could attract unwanted attention in our country. And all around us, if you look in Burkina, if you look in Nigeria, you would see the presence of Islamic terrorists. And it worries us because of this constant fight with the U.S. So there's cause for concern. And I think that we cannot sweep those issues under the carpet. At the moment, it seems like it's a moot point because it's been
ratified,
passed.
yes.
And unfortunately, those who are there to defend us walked out.
Very well. Let me move to Mr. Opon. The agreement, looking
George,
at it goes, I mean, there are certain provisions that specifically talk about the respect for the sovereignty of each state. For instance, it says that the agreement, when ratified by Parliament, is intended to contribute to enhanced security cooperation between the USA and Ghana based on full respect for the sovereignty of each other. Then there's another part that says there's a need for respect for the sovereignty of each other. But there are people who are saying, again, the concerns that, yes, if this is the case, then why do we have certain provisions in there which suggest that our laws, which, you know, should govern people within the territories of Ghana, when it comes to the forces, the civilians that would be coming along with them, the contractors, they are not necessarily to be subjected to these things. For instance, let's look at the driver's license issue, as in they'll come in and their licenses will be deemed to be valid, and so they will carry on. Whereas others are asking that, I mean, you go to a state, you have your driver's license, yes, but you wouldn't necessarily need to be tested by the authority in that country to have legitimacy in your driving activities. So these concerns about sovereignty,
Right.
are they real, or they are just being, you know, imagined?
Well, thank you very much. I think everybody have their own opinion on legal issues. And for me, that is the way to go. I mean, the fact that we have the opportunity to express ourselves on a matter of law, and we do so with decorous language and disposition, that is the way to go. There's no problem with it at all. But let's look at the nature of this agreement, even as ratified. The question is it a law? In my view, it is not a law. And therefore, for a start, any provision in this agreement, in my view, which is inconsistent with any law in Ghana, that law will prevail over this provision. So if there's a law that says that everybody who has to drive a vehicle in this country must have a driver's license, then if somebody brings the matter up, in my view, whoever is not using Ghanaian driving license or any other form of authorization, that person will be going against the laws of Ghana. So perhaps the best way is for these people to present their licenses to the DVLA, for them to either endorse it with a note or authenticate it or validate it. Maybe that is a better word, in my view. Now, because I say it's not a law, because the laws of Ghana are contained in the Constitution, clearly and expressed in it. Article 11 spells out what the laws of Ghana are. It doesn't include an agreement ratified by Parliament. And for me, that is a very important point, because otherwise, we will be raising this ratified agreement to the status of law. And in my understanding, it is not. So, and that will lead me to other provisions in it. But we will come to that later. When you look at, I mean, issues have been raised about the national interest and so on, and that Article 73 states that the government of Ghana shall conduct its international affairs in consonance with the accepted principles of public international law and diplomacy in a manner consistent with the national interest of Ghana. So some raise the issue whether or not this agreement is consistent with the national interest of Ghana. And the national interest of Ghana itself has also been defined in the Constitution. Article 295 also defines it, and I'll just paraphrase that any matter that inures to the generality, the benefit of the generality of the people of Ghana. Let me just quote, and then we go on. Now,
295.
okay. So we have the, of course, it's used interchangeably with public interest. So we have, it includes any right or advantage which inures or is intended to inure to the benefit generally of the whole of the people of Ghana. The public interest is used interchangeably with national interest, in my view. So, but in looking at the national interest or the public interest and applying that principle to analyze this agreement, and some have said that we are worse off or we have very little in it. But I think if you are doing so, you do not only have to consider it narrowly by applying only the, if you like, the minimal or insignificant, quote and unquote, benefit that this agreement brings. What about the broader benefit? I mean, to make it simplistic, U.S. citizens have, by their tax, donated to you or given you as a gift huge sums of money, and whoever had in the past used the road from Tetekwashi to Malam will now be in perpetuity thanking whoever assisted us or funded that road. Now, did we complain that what is in it for the U.S. citizen? Now they are bringing you more money to ensure that your power, all your power problems, or substantially, to the extent possible, will be resolved. We hailed them. The money is big, oh, we took it. And in fact, we hailed President Mills and President Mahama for ensuring that we met the conditions to enable us access the second tranche of the Millennium Challenge account. Whose money is it? It's
so
not
you're
US
saying
citizens.
this is time to return a favor?
I'm saying that to say that there is no free lunch is to mean that when you are being given a gift, especially by the West, ask them, what is in it for you?
Don't worry, Ghana is now beyond age.
Well, no, we are saying maybe that is even the more reason why you should accept such a concept now. So when they were giving us all this, we shouldn't have been in an illusion that it was just for free forever. Now they come back, they won't pay tax. They are setting off all the benefits that you alone took when they brought you all these monies and other enhanced benefits. So to see that this is the opportunity for a U.S. citizen to also ask something from us. You have always been asking from the citizens of the U.S. This whole thing is in protection of the sovereignty and security of the U.S. citizen first. And then perhaps we will also benefit inferentially. You understand? So if they now also say that, well, this is our time, we also want your assistance, and now all of a sudden they have become like quote and unquote monsters, and we are afraid of them. And for me, it's even more worrying that we are giving impetus to evil people, that once US people set up their systems here, evil men will come and attack us. I think in most cases, Boko Haram are attacking their own citizens, their own colleagues in Nigeria. It's not, they are not attacking any US system.
But
Afghanistan, the same.
But that fear, as in the possibility of an attack, is not in a vacuum. It's happened elsewhere, and it's a real fear. I'm not even the Burkina Faso. It was because of French presence and the areas around Cameroon, all that. Of course, I mean, so it shouldn't be as if it's the US alone. First, let's also talk about even when Makola got burnt. Who did we invite to come here to investigate? It's not US fire service men. I'm saying that these things they bring to us cannot measure in any way to our national security. But it's on principle. When you take good things, the Bible says, must you not also consider bad things too, quote and unquote? You understand? So let us not all of a sudden look as if we don't want to help you have anything at all to the US. Some even asked yesterday, are we still in non-aligned movement? That Nkrumah in AU conference said that we should be wary of a military aid. If Nkrumah were here today, and you see, sometimes it's worrying that we use 1961 lenses to analyze 21st century 2018 matters. So that is my point. But that is not to say that the little I have seen about this agreement in terms of law, I'm saying that, but I'm not too worried because I still strongly hold the view that this is not law. So you cannot, Parliament cannot ratify an agreement, or as they have done anyway. This agreement cannot pretend, as it appears it is doing, in Article 18, settlement of dispute, that those disputes cannot be resolved by executive agents, that cannot be resolved by executive agents, shall be referred to parties for consultation and resolution as appropriate, and shall not be referred to any national or international court. This cannot be. This, in my view, cannot be. Tribunal or similar body. As for international court, I'm totally against it.
But domestic court, including our Supreme Court, no way. This agreement, in the manner it has been couched under Article 18, in my own understanding, which I think is limited, but I still insist that this cannot, as they say, and it's an established principle, two persons cannot oust the jurisdiction of the court or cannot contract out of the jurisdiction of the court or the laws of Ghana. So I think it may be here, but in my view, if there is any infringement, for example, if because of this agreement, a constitutional provision is, as it were, violated, or any other law is violated, a court of law should be able to assume jurisdiction and determine whether or not it violates the laws of Ghana.
Subject to someone taking it up to the court.
Oh, yes,
otherwise, this is what we will see.
Yeah, but I'm saying that for me, in my understanding, whatever it is an agreement, but this agreement cannot pretend to prevail over the laws of Ghana. And it cannot, between the US and Ghana, cannot, in my view, contract out of law to the extent that it says that when there is, because already our Alternative Dispute Resolution Act, which should apply to this, states that when a disagreement based on agreement, if I'm making sense, or when there is a dispute in relation to an agreement which stipulates dispute resolution, if it relates to interpretation of the Constitution, enforcement of the Constitution, anything that relates to the national or public interest and the environment, even only the courts of Ghana have jurisdiction. No arbitral body has jurisdiction to resolve those matters. So I think, and then also I've been trying, maybe later I'll find it. I can't see any governing law. Two important clauses, must of necessity in my view, contained in an agreement. The governing law, resolution, including venue for resolution of dispute.
Clearly it's missing from here.
Well, I just saw it, but maybe I will see it later. But not to refer to the governing law, the law that applies, by which where there is a disagreement, a dispute, which they must come, or they may come, then there should be clear provision on the applicable law.
To Honorable Obiamwa for a response.
Yeah, maybe he will help
yes. Ms. Obiamwa,
yes.
Do we have the governing law clause in that agreement, and how does that impact, whether it's in it or not?
Thank you. If you look at this entire agreement, that's defense cooperation and status of United States forces. It is in consonance with general agreements that are signed when it comes to status of forces. It's not only regarding Ghana. ECOWAS countries, the UN countries, even the UK and Turkey recently signed the same agreement. And that is the form that it takes.
Without stipulating.
You don't need to. You don't need to, because when what the law says, if I showed it to Lawyer, is that what this agreement is saying is that when there are disputes, this is how we settle the disputes.
Between the parties?
Between the parties.
And if it's not, I mean,
of course it is not. You even have noticed, unlike the other, unlike the other agreements, you even have a provision for termination, where you think you give enough notice to terminate the whole process. But I'm saying that the major thing here is settlement of disputes. How do you settle the disputes? Where do you settle it? It doesn't say that the U.S. law, or the general thing that we even have is the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations,
so you're looking at
April 1961, which applies whether you put it here or not. The Vienna Convention of 1961 on diplomatic relations. That is where they even drew our attention to the fact that if your forces get to the U.S., your mission in U.S. can apply to our government under the General Forces of Convention. They will be granted all the diplomatic status that we are demanding here. It's even in the agreement.
The Vienna Convention has it been ratified, incorporated
since 1961? Yes.
Is it part of our law?
It's part of our laws. Diplomatic relations, Vienna Convention. Act what? It doesn't have to be an act.
No, we need yes, if it's
no,
but anyway.
The agreements are brought to Parliament to be ratified. They don't bring them under act.
I'm asking whether it has been ratified.
I'm telling you, it has been ratified. You can go and check.
Okay. That is
you can go and check. So our attention was even drawn. So Attorney General, all the team, Defense, Interior, Attorney General, the Military High Command, when these issues came up, all these things were brought out. That's the most critical
another thing before
the other
we
thing
move on
is
to...
that, the other thing is that people talk about sovereignty. That their forces are coming here. Are we not losing sovereignty? I don't.
Not just about they coming in here, but issues about tax exemptions. We're talking about Ghana beyond aid. How do we get to that point if we're setting up all of these things and all of that? Yes.
Yesterday, tax exemptions that had been carried over from NDC period. At one point, we saw 176 million for people who want to just do business in Ghana here. 176 million, which we had to, by obligation, because the NDC had entered into that agreement already.
And we're going to have more of such with this agreement.
As for tax exemptions, every business that you think that is ordinary business, billions of tax exemptions have been granted. If this is what will let them bring in their goods, because whether we like it or not, it's a defense corporation, and whether we like it or not, they have superior defense than Ghana. If I were the head of state, I want security in my country. This is the kind of agreement I will enter into. And I will define the areas so that it will not be like you just walk on Ghana streets holding your arms.
Very well. We need to
That's
move
why
on.
the areas have been
move on
defined. If you think that this arrangement is not good for defense and security, during your time, you saw it, but you didn't even define the areas.
We will need to
and
move
I
on.
think that it's really critical for this country.
But before that,
we should not pretend that we have superior military or superior defense when we don't have.
Very well, but I mean, as Mr. Opon said, there's nothing like free lunch. It will come back to like.
No, but why do you want free lunch?
One way.
Why do you want free lunch?
Nobody wants it. I'm just saying it's not.
You don't have money for your military.
There's nothing like free lunch.
You don't have money for equipment.
There's
you don't have
nothing
money
like
for
free
boarding
lunch,
gadgets.
really.
Somebody is coming in with this corporation, and they are telling you that by the time they even finish it, they will have spent about $20 million.
But we will need to.
If you stay in your small corner,
move on
and
with that one. I think we
can.
Honorable, I think we can move on safely now to look at the Bank of Ghana taking over the management of UniBank. And I see Honorable George Lo shake his head. I wonder why you're shaking your head over that. But
if this is the approach we are putting to governance, then there's a big issue. We have a duty to look for money to. I'm saying that we have a duty as a government to look for money to resource.
You see, again, there we go. There we go, please.
It cannot be that
gentlemen, hold your horses, please. Gentlemen, hold your horses.
If this is
we've moved on. We've moved on. We're moving on. Now, I'll start with you, Mr. Joe Jackson. Take us through this whole UniBank issue. I mean, UniBank prior to this takeover had been in the news, and at the time they were talking about they're going to take over ADB, for instance. And then just a couple of weeks, or in fact maybe a week after, we heard of UniBank being the one taken over by the Bank of Ghana. And I mean, looking back at the literature on the industry, clearly challenges within the banking sector, I mean, go as far back, you know, even before the 2016 elections. At some point it became, if you like, an election issue, the challenges in the financial sector. So tell us, this whole process that we saw play out just a couple of weeks back to the point where Bank of Ghana announced this takeover.
First of all, let's take the politics out of this issue. Really, the politics are distorting what the real issues are. On one hand, we read a report that said that UniBank had taken control over a certain portion of shares of ADB. Not really that UniBank was taking over ADB. Let that be clear. It just said UniBank was taking over shares. Then someone inferred that it was going to take over ADB, and the central bank just came out to say, no, I don't know anything about this. If somebody has pledged his shares, etc., there's a whole process to that. So let's put the original hula baloo in context. There was an article that said that UniBank had taken control, or people had defaulted, or whatever it is, and their shares had been pledged to them. That gave them some controlling or significant shareholding in ADB. And then it was inferred that UniBank was taking over ADB, and the central bank had to come out and say, I don't know anything about this. But I also want to put one other thing on the table.
Context.
In the case of UT and Capital Bank, the issues were allowed to fester for so long that the licenses had to be withdrawn. The banks were effectively insolvent.
They said deeply insolvent, actually.
Yes, I mean, shareholders' funds gone, depositors' funds gone, to huge sums of money, which had to be absorbed by the central bank and the institution that took over, GCB. What we find in the case of Uni Bank is that the central bank categorized a number of issues. It said, one, we have ways of measuring how you are able to exist as a bank and continue to perform your functions. And because you have depositors' funds, we as the regulator have a role to play. That is the capital adequacy ratio. You can go technical and define, but let's not even bother with that.
Long and short of it is?
Long and short of it is that you are falling short, not just short. We work around 10%, you are going into negative. Negative is a big matter. Then he went on to say that we had tried working with you, but you have not come up with any plan as to how you're going to resolve the matter. Then the even more the deadly issue was that you were lying to me as a central bank, and that there were issues that your reports were untruthful, and there were things on your loan book that you had not declared. And in any case, you owed me, you are taking up to 2.2 billion cedis from me. Now, when the central bank outlines these issues clearly, one by one, and he says, I've stepped in. And remember, when the central bank says 2.2 billion cedis, it's not some money from somewhere. It's our money. How much money did even the shareholders put in to start the institution? And how much are they holding in shareholders' funds? That now they have taken another 2.2 billion. So it's very simple. The central bank says, I've stepped in. I don't trust you. I don't believe you. You have lied to me. And so I'm bringing in KPMG to step in, stabilize the issue, bring you into compliance, let us know what the true state of issues are, and then we can take it from there. There are three possibilities. One is that they could be asked to, worst case scenario, they could say the situation is so bad you are like UT and something of that sort. The other scenario is that you could be asked to recapitalize, and the third possibility is that they could just return the institution to you because what they thought was wrong was not so. So we are not at that level of UT, and it is a credit to the...
But you see, when you say that, I would want to come in there, because clearly you're suggesting that UT situation and Capital Bank situation, you said in your words, was allowed to fester for some time.
Yes.
Compared to this, you don't think this was allowed to fester for some time.
No.
But in their statement, the press release they issued, the certain words they're using, which for me strike me. Like, for instance, this says the appointment of the official administrator has therefore become necessary due to the fact that UniBank has, among other things, persistently maintained a capital adequacy ratio below 0, currently -24. My question is, persistently, over what period? And how did it, if if you like, the required rate, if it's 10%, how did it go way down to -24%? Over what period? Again, you have them say persistently suffered liquidity shortfalls and consistently breached. So these words are very, they jump at me when I hear them: persistently, consistently. Over what period? Okay. So much to say that, well, compared to the UT Capital Bank decision, is not necessarily...
First of all, if there's a temporary dip in your capital adequacy ratio, it's an important issue, but it's not a life and death issue. It is only the persistence that will make the central bank, literally what they say, start to shine its eye on your business. So persistence in itself is a description of why they had to step in. If it was not persistent, and if it was not, I mean, other institutions may have capital adequacy ratios that are sub 10%, but if it's not persistent, or you presented a credible plan as to how you're going to get out of this situation, the central bank will allow you to run. It's not the persistence, for me, that is the key. it is the lying. And and you see, it has a lot of implications.
And again, another question is, so how long did that happen, and how soon did the Bank of Ghana come to the realization that it was being lied to?
Unfortunately,
raising issues about the BOG's own systems.
Oh, but there's major issues about the BOG's own systems. And I will submit here that the BOG does not have enough resources to undertake the kind of banking supervision and the proactive supervision that it needs to do for our financial sector in view of where it is. I'll give you a typical example.
Quickly, then,
I sit on another institution, on the board of another institution in Nigeria. We had problems. BOG comes to sit, the bank, Central Bank of Nigeria comes to sit in board meetings. It comes to sit in board meetings. It's there. They will jack up the directors. I'm sitting in Ghana. The institution is. They will yank me back into Lagos to go and attend the board meeting and answer for certain things that are going wrong. Here, there's a sense that, especially with our local institutions that are owner managed, we have taken the responsibility of governance lightly. And and that's the thread that's running through all these institutions. They are local, they are owner managed, and the governance, there are major issues with governance. And that when people who sit on the board don't realize the magnitude of the responsibility you carry when you take other people's money. You see, there are all sorts of businesses. If your business is risking your own money, you can do what you like within limits.
Thank you.
But with a financial institution, the responsibility is bigger.
Quickly, yes, Mr. George Law. Mr. Jackson has raised the issue about corporate governance, which the Bank of Ghana raises in its press release as one of the contributory factors, or the lack of it, as one of the contributory factors to this situation. Is it fair to say, as Mr. Jackson has said here, that there seems to be that issue with Ghanaian-owned businesses?
Well, I have said that across the board, be it Ghanaian-owned, be it even state-owned, we always have issues with corporate governance. Because rather than see corporate governance as the vehicle that drives our businesses, we see it as compensatory. So Mr. Joe Jackson is my friend. So I become Minister of Finance. I'm looking around for people to put, oh, okay, Joe, I think I want you to go here. Or you go here. Oh, this guy, Charlie, put me somewhere and put me. And that's been our attitude. And possibly that's some of the attitude that's fixed in to some of the financial institutions. But I have issues with the whole takeover. Not because I think that the BOG hasn't got the rights. Under law, they have the authority, they have the rights, more than adequate. But you see, if I understand Mr. Jackson correctly, there are options. But you see, the options that you take should be options that I believe you would have thought through carefully and weighed all the options. One, if BOG believes that they are being lied to, who are the first points of what? The bank has auditors. Has anything been done to the auditors? Have the auditors been invited and queried about the figures that are being approved?
My understanding is the period of the official administration is part of gathering further evidence.
You see, let me tell you, when you are a governor of a bank, right, and I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, UniBank is one of the banks where I operate, so, but I don't have a
your money safe.
No, it's not about money being safe. But when you are sitting in your office, like I'm doing, and then you radio or you get a Charlie breaking news, and UniBank and then you go to your television or something. There's a live press conference, and then you see the governor saying we've taken over this bank. Blah, blah. It's not everybody who from day one will understand all the fine language about we are taking KPMG as administrators and things like that. For somebody, my life savings is gone. Is that the only option we have? I was even of the view that couldn't KPMG have moved in quietly at the instruction of the Bank of Ghana to do some, as it were, do the administrative bit, just asking the directors quietly to step aside and get these people to move in and to do all the due diligence that they have to do. Okay? And then gradually there's a rollout.
But isn't it a matter of
I want to
public?
make a little interjection.
Yes.
The Bank of Ghana was specific.
Yes.
That, for example, they had been told not to make new loans. In talking about the kind of intervention you're talking about, they have been asked not to make new loans. And so, over a process, they are coming quietly and said, we are managing your process. Don't make new loans without talking to us. And they had gone ahead to make new loans. So, you see, it is saying that that quiet intervention had been made and was not effective.
Mr. Jackson, do you know also, and that has been done in the past, do you know, for instance, that if I appointed Mr. Jackson tomorrow as Chief Operating Officer of UniBank or as Managing Director of UniBank, Bank of Ghana must approve? You know that? And the same way, if his conduct is unbecoming of a Managing Director of such a bank, Bank of Ghana can actually ask that his appointment be revoked. You see, there are a plethora of things that I thought would have been done. You see, because this message you send out there by this kind of, and he started by saying, let's not talk.
Now you're saying two things. Let me, I don't know if I'm correct.
I'm saying,
but just, I earlier on heard you have concerns about the public display.
Yes, that's exactly where I am.
Okay, but when you're saying that there were a number of things that could have been done.
Yes,
then
rather than the public display.
Okay, so that's just it. Because according to the Bank of Ghana, there was a certain restoration plan that was submitted by UniBank, and they were supposed to have gone according to that, but they didn't.
Yes, but I'm saying that, you see, the Bank of Ghana must also be mindful of the fact that, you see, signals we send out, you know, are crucial in these things. And you see, he talked about let's take the politics out. The politics wouldn't have come in if this was done a month earlier.
So what changed within a month?
Because, you see, everybody gets up. You remember the Bell Star Pledge and all the things that he spoke about. People read political issues into them. And people already, because the NIB, ADB issues were there.
Exactly what we want to get.
If you allowed me,
he's making his submissions.
I'm saying that
he's making submissions.
People thought that the Minister of Finance had a plan to merge NIB, ADB. Okay? And that this pledge by Belsal and other things was taking that off, was scattering that plan. Those are perceptions, those are speculations. I'm not saying they are. Yeah, but I'm saying that, so once this happens, people begin to read all manner of issues into them. But that aside, I am saying that, you see, the Bank of Ghana has many options. I believe that possibly if I were governor, I would have chosen some other way. It doesn't mean that my way would necessarily be wrong. But you see,
but which other way?
I'm saying that I would have possibly stepped back, looked at gradually saying, okay, you step aside. Somebody else would take over and do what we expect the due diligence.
Isn't it a matter of public interest so much so that people are entitled to know?
Again, with the capacity of the Bank of Ghana. You see, sometimes, you know the things that influence us in doing business. So, Joe Jackson will go and receive an award as the best bank in corporate, the bank. And we see these things every day. Sometimes a bank that, I remember UT, they swept like 6 awards only to be told in the next month or two. And who is watching these things? You see? And for me, I even felt very scandalized. And I was telling somebody that, if the former governor of our bank, our central bank, a former finance minister, has a bank and the bank will be going in this direction, then are we safe? But there are all things that come up. For me, I think that I wasn't surprised. Luckily, I understood the issues well enough. But I wasn't surprised that the following day, many people were rushing to UniBank to take their deposits. It means that the bank, if you don't take care, may never recover. Because if other people take their deposits, then there's a problem.
But don't depositors have a right to know exactly what is happening, and so that they have an interest?
Yes.
So yes, if the next day they go there to go get their money.
Yes, but I'm saying that is why the Bank of Ghana is a regulator. And I agree with when you wait till a bank hits negative 24 as you be put in there, then there's a problem with you, the regulator yourself.
Sure.
The Bank of Ghana must take part of the flag for the things that are going on in the finance sector.
Very well. I'll move to Mr. Pong here, and let me have your submissions on this. I mean, clearly lots of issues, and one other factor aside corporate governance issue that the bank raises, the Bank of Ghana raises in its PR is talking about legacy issues in the financial sector attributed to weak economic growth, poor corporate governance, and risk management practices. And we do also know that even in the UniBank, the specific instance, there was an issue about government contractors being indebted to them to the tune of over 400 million Ghana cedis. And even when the finance ministry committed to absorbing that, according to the Bank of Ghana, that wouldn't have done any, made any difference. And so this was clearly the way to go. So the issue about payment of contractors cannot be isolated from the kind of situation we are having here, can we? Yeah,
so it's a situation which someone may describe it as the government blowing hot and cold, approbating and reprobating. There may be some justification to come to that conclusion, because if you don't pay your contractors on time, and we know that these contractors go for monies from banks, loans from banks, which they are supposed to repay within specific periods, usually which is purged against the period within which the construction would have been completed, and expected period of payment by the state would have also been effected.
Right.
So that said, yes, in a way, the government, or the state, I should put it that way, may share some of the blame, maybe contributory negligence sort of thing, if I can make that analogy. But then, as a bank, you also have a responsibility to ensure that you give out depositors money, because you are a trustee. Knowing that these persons are likely to pay, and if they don't, then there is a third party or some other collateral that can be easily realized and the amount applied. So the fact that they are government contractors doesn't mean that your responsibility to ensure that you apply beneficiaries' monies or depositors' monies as if it were your own has been discharged. It doesn't. So you are careful not to give too much out to government contractors, knowing that monies the state's indebtedness to them may take quite some time before it is paid, and then also paid to you. So I think it's also maybe a guiding principle to the banks to be a bit more careful than perhaps some of them have been in the past when you are giving monies to contractors, especially government contractors, because we know that consistently for over a long period of time, the state will not usually pay these contractors within time. We know that. So if you don't have a backup, then you are going to cause depositors' money or interest to suffer the way it has happened. But you see, I think that even when you look at the grounds for appointment an official administrator contained in section 107(1) of Act 930, and indeed I think that this act is one of the best laws that our parliament has ever passed. It is so comprehensive, but also within it, being complex, there could be problems that if we don't also check, this whole act may be unwittingly or maybe inadvertently applied to achieve a certain purpose which is akin to expropriation by the state. And I made that point when the UT Bank and the Capital Bank issue came up, that the Bank of Ghana, it's being a state institution, yes, albeit independent. It's a state institution. As Mr. Jackson said, the monies they are giving to these banks are our money. But they are the managers of the state financial assets, if there's something like that. Our money is simply put. So we should also be careful not to be seen to using the law to take away compulsorily assets of private persons. And I had a worry at the beginning. It's also because, of course, that one is different from this. And also because...
But if the law allows them to do that.
That is why I'm saying that the law itself, you see, the law, maybe I should have put it that the law itself should be carefully applied. You see, it's one thing making. Please go in.
No, I wanted to point out something. I see exactly where you're coming from, but let's be clear. You step in when shareholders' value is zero, when depositors' funds are at risk. So, in truth, it is not that we are taking over an asset that has value. Your asset is worthless.
In other words, you're saying it's not an arbitrary thing. There are guidelines or criteria which you have to...
Like, I understand you. Okay. I'm only sounding a caution because if you get authoritarian persons, they can apply this to expropriate assets just by coming under... And I commend Bank of Ghana because the beginning, I still insist that the UT and the Capital Bank one, they should have gone first under Section 107, where you bring in the official administrator to take over the management first for 6 months and then 3 and 3 months.
But the question is, was there anything to be managed at that point?
But that is what I'm saying, that if they had stepped in first, because
and that is why we say it festered.
Well, but
so long.
So is because the Bank of Ghana itself didn't apply Section 107 in the first place. If you apply Section 107, you mitigate the losses in the situation. And for me, I said then, and I still repeat that, there should be transparency. The announcement and the manner this one was, I don't have any problem with it. Because I had an issue with the UT one, that we just woke up one day, and that is a proper takeover. This is not a takeover.
No,
yet again, the terms we use may also account for the situation that Mr. George Lowe...
So this is a management takeover, as it were. They're taking not ownership.
To manage the
exactly.
It is not a takeover as understood in corporate governance and so on.
Together with
of course, I would say that the UT one, it is. Yes. The Capital Bank one, it is a takeover. But this one is not. This one is only about the management
the license
for a period of time.
Withdrawn with this.
Yes.
Whereas in UT, the licenses were
because
withdrawn.
In the UT,
don't exist anymore.
Yes, in the UT, they came under Section 123. And Section 123 empowers the Bank of Ghana to cancel the license.
Exactly.
And once the license is cancelled, even the whole establishment has ceased to exist. But of course, the Companies Act also operates because this is a company. And therefore, even the shareholder, it will be akin to liquidation, where if there are surpluses, the shareholders. But even under this, shareholders will not be paid. Under this current situation, shareholders will not be paid. The KPMG will now determine which of the top management they may want to retain to work with. But I've been asking the question, if KPMG is competent, and I think they are, that's why Bank of Ghana, for a third time, have appointed them. Why don't the banks go to them to help them recruit competent persons to manage the banks to avoid such embarrassment or embarrassment such as this? And the owner-manager thing that Uncle Jackson spoke about, it's all throughout. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with having your own kith and kin or even your own children or relatives managing your business. But I think that because of issues of consanguinity, it's my own father's, it's my own mother, so is it your business? Because of that, maybe they can play some executive directorship role. But the day-to-day money, I know of one bank, I'm not permitted to mention it, but I know of one bank, the majority shareholder is in the bank. His son was employed like any other staff, and he has gone through the mill for about 10 years now, and he's now managing the credit unit. It's not even a director as in proper, or even a managing director, which I'm sure if the father wanted, he could have easily appointed him. So, if in future he now becomes the managing director, you know he's gone through the mill. So there's nothing wrong with a relative managing such a business. But when the person, right from school, of course, you may have studied business management and commercial law and all that, but the ground, especially in a terrain like ours, may be so different from what you learn from the classroom. So I think that for the banks and for us, because it is our money, go to KPMG. Like the Bible talks about, go to the ants. Learn the ways of KPMG. There's nothing wrong with because it appears KPMG has a pool of competent financial managers. Go to them, let them either train the people you can trust or let them give you people who can manage, because at the end of the day, it is not only the depositors, but your own shares, your own interest in the business. You can lose it because an incompetent person is a word that a lot of people don't like, but yes, if somebody who cannot manage, why are you preaching, Mr. Lowe? Because I mentioned
you're making disclosures you don't have to make. Seriously. Some things your eyes see, but your mouth doesn't say it. So you carry on.
So you see, so I think that, you know, in all fairness, at the same time, we should also ensure that as banks, we know our responsibility. And corporate governance is so important. There is, you can get one of these financial institutions. The majority shareholder, of course, is a shareholder, majority shareholder. A managing director, he is a director. Take salaries for all this, or maybe allowances for all this. That is not so much important. But how are you able, as a manager, a director, because if you are a managing director, you are even concerned about payment of staff because you know it will affect your interest.
I mean, the rules are different for different terms of references. Yeah.
Be your majority shareholder. You can attend shareholders meeting. Get other people to manage it. No matter how competent you are, you can never, in my view, manage an institution like a bank just by yourself, alone. And of course, there are instances where you may be able to. I know one person, even a loan he takes has to be approved by a committee. One managing director who is also a shareholder. There are some like that, but you don't find as many of such people in the system.
Very well.
Let us, and please, I was trying to get the politics aspect, but it didn't come out quite clearly.
Yes, so
and I know for a fact that the Bank of Ghana didn't just go to make press conference. Every information had already been given out to the bank. Maybe you can talk about limited time, but the bank knew that the Bank of Ghana was going to take that action on that day. I think there's a fair information about that.
Quickly, let me move to Honorable Obi Amor here. And Honorable Obi, I mean, you've had the three, your co-panelists speak on all that, but you would definitely respond to whatever issues you want to. But specifically looking at the BOG, they've touched on some. But moving forward, I mean, we heard previously that there were some 9 banks, as it were, in this category. So moving forward, looking at the regulation of the BOG and how it's been, you know, it's played out in respect of these 3 banks, UT, Capital, and this, how is the future looking?
Well, thank you so much. This is a very important issue. Indeed, people sometimes try to overlook the fact that government itself has some money at UniBank. I am an account holder, but when it comes to these things, maybe it's not significant enough for me to even start complaining. But I'm aware that there are state institutions, who have substantial money at UniBank. So it's not like when this thing hits us, it's only for a few people. Government itself has been hit. But I have to commend BOG from the way they have reacted swiftly to this issue. We were all hearing about some banks suffering, and some were dropping names, and sometimes when you even have accounts with a bank, you wonder whether you should send more money there, or you go and take a little that you have there so that you are safe from this situation. But it's a long history. This thing didn't happen overnight. BOG has come out to say that when they did the assessment and everything, some banks were not meeting the requirements. Some banks were really suffering, and if they did not catch up, they were going to collapse. So when UT and the other bank collapsed, more or less, we knew that there was trouble in the banking sector. Then we woke up March 7 to hear that UniBank had his major shareholders pledging their shares, and that by that they had 51% to be able to take over ADB in a deal involving about $600 million. And everybody was saying, hey, But you thought we heard in the grapevine that UniBank was not doing too well and that people were not even really ready to send more money there. So how come all of a sudden they are strong enough to take over ADB? To the extent that the ADB was even suspended on the Ghana Stock Exchange. But quickly ADB came to deny, Bank of Ghana came to deny, and then UniBank had to find a way of coming back to clarify the situation. Barely 3 weeks after, then we are told that UniBank itself has to go under some management by KPMG. And I like what KPMG is required to do. I always call it the 4 R's. Responsibilities of shareholders, directors, and key management personnel will now be under KPMG, at least for 6 months.
Yep.
And then they are required to ensure that there's regulatory compliance, so that they comply with all that they are supposed to comply with, because as the BOG said, they had breached a lot of the regulations. Then the 3rd R is rehabilitate the bank. And the 4th R, return the bank to private ownership and management. If they are going to follow this and save UniBank, then we are all safe. And for Bank of Ghana to come in at this level to bring in KPMG, that means that at least this time they are on the ball. Their eyes are on the ball, and they are really doing what they are required to do. Because just recently you heard how they had said that they were even sending some microfinance companies to Yoko and all those things. If BOG will play its role very well, some of these things will be avoided. Because you hear from the industry that there are too many banks, and some of them are not really doing well. And then Bank of Ghana has even raised the capital adequacy ratio, and then all those things. If those banks don't sit down to think of mergers and think of how they
don't like doing at all,
how they will consolidate, then obviously some of them will have to go down. Unfortunately, when they are going down with customers, business people, government, all those things, and it will not be good for our industry, especially when we think that they play a critical role in our economy. So I think that so far so good. Initially, the UniBank said that they were even going to court. They didn't agree with this thing. But if you listen to their lead counsel, if he may be called so, Dominic Ayini, is now saying that they are now ready to sit down and see the way forward. Initially, it was like, we are ready for litigation, we have not been fair. Even we had MPs, very responsible people, saying that this is a political thing and it's a way of taking over a bank which is closely affiliated to one government. I was one party, and I was scandalized. I mean, we can't run our business this way. Have they complied or if not complied? Would the average customer suffer or not? Is government going to suffer or not? Then have we applied all the rules we are required to apply? Then you subject to the test and everything, and then you can come out to say that this is not political or anything. But if you start throwing in those things, it muddies everything, and then it becomes difficult
to out the real issues,
assess the critical things that we need to assess, so that we save other banks from all this trouble. So that people will have confidence in banking. Otherwise, they put their money in their homes before all the problems that you can think of.
And keep it safe.
And keep you safe with all the problems, and of course.
Yes. Let me take some messages quickly, and then we go for a break and come back. This one is coming in from Isahaku in Tamil. He says, good morning, Abna. The USA is certainly dictating so much to the sovereignty of Ghana in this 2018 agreement. Why should we fund a special runway for their use, as well as providing them for free our air spectrum for their exclusive communication? And this one says, this is Kosami Nima. It says, good morning to you and your panelists. I know a bank that has given loans to almost 70 to 80% of small-scale miners, and they are not paying because of the situation they find themselves. And the bank is under threat by BOG. Yes, that's another. Good morning. No, he's talking about the small-scale mining, not the illegal one, the one that currently has a ban on. Yes, that's serious. This one, good morning. I don't understand what Lawyer Pong said, that because we have benefited from America, we should give them what they want. I have a question for him. What about the other countries that helped us financially? Can they also bring their offers, which we can't reject? That is Malik Adama. maybe the sarcasm of your thing didn't hit home with that person.
That is fine.
Yes. Good morning to you and your panel. Please, he says, be sincere and truthful. I do not think this U.S. military in Ghana is advisable, and government should rescind its decision and send those military back to U.S. No matter what they what the gains are. We need to live in peace, not in pieces. That's KN Majid. I mean, unfortunately, the deed is done. It was ratified yesterday, and until anything unexpected happens, this is what we are stuck with. But we'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we move on to the GNPC and matters arising from the approval of the GNPC 2018 work plan. You're watching New Day, Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We are live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're streaming live online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We'll be moving on next to look at the Parliament's approval of the 2018 work program of the GNPC and the matters that came out of that. I would want to start with you, Mr. Georgelo. The GNPC. What is it about the GNPC and its the recurrent issues about certain expenditure lines? I know, of course, for state institutions, other state institutions, and other state institutions, these things come up. But there seems to be some peculiarity with GNPC. What is it about it?
Well, GNPC has been in the news year in, year out, government in, government out, about this same case.
That is going away from its core mandate. Why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? Those kinds of arguments.
It depends on every management and what they look out for. Parliament just has a duty to ensure that, so far as they are concerned, the proper things are done, and that they exercise some real supervisory role, particularly in terms of how finances are deployed. GNPC has had issues about offices, and it has appeared consistently in the work program over a year. I remember when NDC was in power, the same issues came up. And let me just even add that when I read that they've even been given the green light to go and source for a $500 million, and I laughed. Because I remember the MPP even went to court over the fact that why should GNPC be allowed to, at the time when we thought that they should go for a loan on their books, we went to court and all that. But we are back to square one, and I'm happy that everybody has now seen the need, to allow companies at that time to, if they can, so that the government debt stock itself does not seem to pile up unnecessarily for our books. So I think that whether we like it or not, as we speak, the work program has been approved, and so they have money to spend. Question that is in the minds of many is that the way we want to spend our money? Yeah.
And that is where that's the crux of the matter.
The crux of the matter. Is that the way we want to spend our money? Some of us kicked against the expenditure with the blasters because we don't think that it brought us any benefit. There's nothing to show for it, even though he went to the national team, yes, but there's nothing to show. No trophy, no World Cup, nothing. Again, here we are. They want to put up a multi-million-dollar office and then renovate another one or refurbish another one.
The current one.
The current one. Is there an agency for that?
But again, on that issue, it takes me back to what we just had, the conversation we just had about the Defense Corporation and the fact that there seems to be a certain turnaround by the minority and all of that. Because this thing about the construction of a new office is not a new thing.
Yes.
Apparently, and according to the minister, the sector minister, Mr. Boache Jako, he is saying that the $20 million allocated to the construction of a new head office is actually a reduction from what was earmarked under the NDC administration, which was $76 million. So then, he is quizzing, why is the NDC up in arms? So it takes us back to, that kind of argument.
You see, I'm happy my brother Obi is on this panel. You see, the way Parliament works and the way things are looked at is always different. You see, when you are in minority, you want answers to questions. When you are in majority, you probably have answers to questions.
But shouldn't it be an issue about principles?
It doesn't.
And you are
You
sticking
see,
to it regardless of where you
it's
stand?
it's not about just that. You see, today, and as was before, I don't think that if you go back to the Hansard and all the interactions that you would have been, I mean, some of us are privy to, it wasn't like a carte blanche that go and spend 76 million, or that we agreed.
It was an earmarked
fund. It wasn't like that, but we had also questioned. I remember in the past, that whole idea of, do we really need that much? Or do we really need to put up new offices? Was something that we all think about. That, well, if you find the money, maybe you do it. It's a work program, what you intend to do. You are not able to do it. If they were able to do it, they would not be bringing it back. This time. I was not at the committee meeting, so I cannot say what justifications that they're giving. But the important thing is that, for me, the issues have been raised. Behoves on GNPC itself and the sector minister and the government to really look at the situation.
But as it is now, this has been approved.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean, like I said, in the NDC time we approved it, but they didn't build it. So again, the minister may take a look at it and with the GNPC board advise on what they want to do. If they are able to raise the money on their own books and it's not going to be too much a burden, they may go ahead and do it. For me, the important thing about parliamentary report is that the report was presented. To the best of my knowledge, the ranking member seconded the motion. It means that at the committee level, both sides were added that, well, let's give them the chance. If they're able to raise the money and it will not cause us any misalignment, but so be it.
It's in the
but
raising,
the question is that of all the challenges that we have, do we think it's something we should prioritize?
Exactly, right. So it's in raising the money, yes, I come to you, Honorable. It's in raising the money for this purpose that, lots of people have genuine concerns. Quick issue, for instance, that can be raised is the fact that, yes, we are still paying the exploration levy and all of that. So why are we still, the GNPC is seen to be engaging in, if you like, exorbitant profligate, yes, that's the word. Profligate expenditure and all of that. So clearly there's that issue.
Thank you so much. As you said, we've passed the work program of activities of GNPC for 2018. I've been in Parliament for 9 years now, and for a long time GNPC was not bringing its program of work. So we started questioning it, and the first time they even brought it, there were so many issues and questions that we had to be back and forth. It took almost 5 to 6 months before Parliament approved it. That was the first time they were doing it. There were so many problems. Now, this is a big improvement on what they've been doing so far. And I need to commend them, and probably the Ministry of Energy, because that's the mother ministry. But in discussing the program of work and everything, we should be careful we don't narrow it down to just a small aspect of it. Because the money, the total expenditure that we're talking about is 926 million. And that one, we even dollars. And that one, they even said that there's an extra 60 million that they will have to go and look for to bail out bust. It needs with its own problems. So, if you take that whole thing, you then have to break it down. The development and production cost, exploration and appraisal projects, upstream debt management, midstream and other projects, capital projects. So it's under capital projects that you talk about offices, which will be in comparative terms, which will be a small aspect of the whole thing. And if you put that in context, then of course the operating expenditure, there are personnel, monuments, general expenses, etc. So it's a comprehensive document, and it talks about the way forward for our major company, which is in charge of petroleum in this country. And if you look at the figures and what you require to do, so huge. But we can maybe try and take out the office aspect of it so that we make progress with the other aspects. What they have here is corporate offices, 30 million. The 30 million is 20 million for Accra, and then 10 million for the operational office in Takoradi. Even that, we've been asked to bring detailed report, detailed, showing everything, design, whatever, and how they ended up at this 20 million. And this is a far better improvement on the 76 million that they had initially earmarked for their corporate office. So we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. You want to use 10 million to build an operational office in Takoradi. Mind you, it was a big issue even during the campaign period, that if that's where the oil, the bulk of the oil is coming from, then the head office should be there. But now the compromise is that send the operational office there, 10 million for it, spend 20 million on your new office you want to build here. Even that, we need to get the details before we can say that this is the final go-ahead for you to be able to do that.
So as it is, it's not been approved?
This is the program of work.
Yes, the program of work, yes.
If you read the report, the committee gave us the impression that they should bring more, better and further particulars, as we say, to be able to convince them that indeed they need to spend that kind of money on their office complex on the George Walker Bush Road. But there are other aspects that we need to look at. Very critical. The GNPC is becoming...
No, I think the reason why this came out strongly is the fact that, I mean, of course, there's a core mandate that the exploration activities and all of those things on the various oil fields and all. So pretty much I think people are not necessarily, if you like, have certain fears, but they're looking at the capital.
I think that people have not taken interest in those aspects. Those are maybe far more critical aspects than the 20 million, 10 million thing.
Right.
Because you're talking almost $1 billion for one corporation. And then they've outlined all that they're going to do to be able to spend that $1 billion. And some of them from their own, what they have is about less than 200 million. The rest they may have to borrow, they may have to do other things. So that is what we need to interrogate. And then we may see that even though the 20 million is huge, it's significant, as compared to the other projects and things, we need a lot of interrogation to be able to see whether indeed they are using our resources very well, or we could still cut some corners. That is how I see it. And of course, they even have that small bit about corporate social responsibility. And then to that one, you heard a lot of noise about it. But if you look at it, it's about helping communities with education, with all those things that would let people also know that at least this is how you are using your money. And of course, don't forget that all this is under the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, and they have to comply with all those things. So yes, let's talk about it. But when it comes to,
you think there are other areas that consider
very critical areas which we need to interrogate.
Considered, yes. Let me just Mr. Johnson here, and then come to Mr. Opong here, the GNPC, and all we'll be hearing about it.
You know, in truth, I have to agree with the sentiments of Honorable Obi Amwa. When you look at that whole budget, there are a number of critical issues, exploration, etc., that we should look at. I'm not sure whether building a new office qualifies under going outside your core area. We may question that, is the office too expensive, or should it be scaled down? That's a discussion we can have. But when there's a huge push for you've gone outside your core area, and you read it and it's because you are building an office, every other institution in this country has built out offices. So when VRA built an office in those days, and the VRA office in its time was a magnificent edifice. Was it outside their core business? I find that, again, there's this back and forth, and if it's 2 legs good, 4 legs bad, pink.
It looks like that's where he's headed.
Yes, you see, where you brought 76 million, and we against it. Somebody brings 20 million. It just muddies the waters.
But doesn't it strike you as concerning, if you like, that in 2016 there was talk about refurbishment cost of 40 million for the Petroleum House in Tema. And in this work program, you have another cost expenditure line 13.4 for refurbishment of the same. Doesn't it jump at you?
The question is that, was the old program done? Was it executed? Was it completed? Was there a cost overrun? You know,
but whether it was completed or not, the question perhaps also is, was the allocated money, as in the 40 million, used?
Exactly.
Yes. So that if you're coming back for 13.4.
But my point is that, as much as offices concern me, what concerns me, I mean, 20 million, right? Dollars is actually less than 5% of their budget that they're looking for, right? So there are bigger issues. I don't want them spending 20 million on an office if they don't need it, or even 10 million cedis on renovation if they don't need it. But I feel that there are more serious issues to be interrogated on that work plan than the office. They're diversions, they're red herrings.
No,
the core issue of GNPC is
quickly.
You see, I understand where you are coming from, and I also want you to understand where others are. Obi raised the issue of bigger issues, and I agree with him. But you see, when you sit in a committee meeting and you are not a technical person in the oil industry, your competency to interrogate how that money will be used will not be the same as 20 million for a building. So maybe that will inform why, you know, that will inform.
I have to take you up on that matter.
No, it's not a kind of web. It's not a kind of web. At that point, that is why he says that.
To the competence of
no,
people.
At that point, no, wait.
They're focusing
at
on
that point,
housing.
wait. At that point, then the issues of, let's look at the specifics comes to play. You
but isn't that why we send it to the committee level in the first place?
Don't also forget that this is an approval given for a work plan. As and when the committee pleases, they invite them.
But it's the same committee that you're saying
yes, I'm saying I know. But as to when the committee pleases, they invite them back to come and answer questions on specifics. So it's not a one-off thing. It's not because work program has been approved, so that for the rest of the year you go and sit in your office and do what you like. From time to time, the committee may pick up information that, oh, this is not going right. Somebody may even petition or anything or on its own conclusion. Okay. So all these things go into it.
Yes, thank you. Yes, back to
the key thing for me is this. Let's look at the bigger issues. GNPC has a role to play. That role is important for this country. And truly, I don't see building an office
as going out of their mandate.
You may argue that the office is expensive. That's a different argument. But let's not create this whole thing that they've gone outside their mandate and they're building roads and they're building houses. That's not what they're doing. Look at the budget. Look at look at the bigger picture. What are the line items? What categories are the expenditure going into? Let's interrogate those categories. Let's say you're overspending on this whole basin exploration. Then we can have a discussion that is meaningful. Let's not degenerate into.
Great. So then clearly we have an issue if after a committee meeting or committee's deliberation of the issues, these things pop up, things that you consider really not to be the key things popping up, then it means we have an issue.
My brother George here raised a very important issue, that sometimes you pick on the smaller issues because maybe, just maybe, you don't understand the bigger issues. But if they don't understand, then we have a bigger problem. Because truly, when you give me a report and the report has 10 items, 10 big ticket items, and you pick the smallest one and you home on the smallest one.
Because you can talk about that immediately.
Oh, George.
No, yes. which raises very concerning issues.
Yes.
Which should, help us bring out key things. Now, Mr. Opong, your perspective on this.
Yes, well, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I am delighted that at least GNPC are going to construct their own offices. I mean, in the past, millions of dollars have been spent by state institutions
Renting.
to rent properties, and sometimes you find out that this is all part of the rent-seeking behavior of people. You have an authority, or person in authority has a friend who has a property. They just rent it out at amounts that are outrageous. And so I've always asked GNPC, and the other one headed by Tampori, what's the
NPA.
The building, it came out. The rent NPA were paying at the time, and I'm sure it's more. They could have applied it to build their own offices within time. So it's a good thing. And I was telling Honorable, the Western region people were also, this morning I heard that the president promised during the campaign that you construct the offices of GNPC there. But as he has said, they have found it necessary to rather construct the operational offices there, which I think is appropriate. And then the administrative office will be in Accra. I mean, you can make an argument for why we should concentrate everything in Accra, but this is where we are. And also about the offices. I mean, this is an office where people bringing billions of dollars will visit. You want to be in some ordinary office? No, we should be attractive. Let's sometimes add a bit of style.
Yes, but it doesn't necessarily need to come with bloated.
Well, this is 20 million. It's a lot of money, but I don't think that with the nature of the business investment that investors bring to GNPC, I mean, I think it's reasonable. And also, there's no reason why they could not add other offices for the public to rent so that they can also get rent from it. Then also, you see, what about the exploration and so on? We know that the data collected by GNPC are sold to prospective investors. And that is very important. And I would wish that at all material time, they should try as much as possible to sell this data for which we are investing this much, at least to the equivalent of how much we have invested or even more, so that we can get a return. Also, I think even if the committee passes it or Parliament passes it, it's still got to do with Parliament supervisory role. It doesn't mean that if they say we need $50 million, you just give them all the $50 million and you are not concerned about how it is invested. As Mr. Lowe said, occasionally, GNPC, the appropriate committee of Parliament should even go to the ground. This is something that sometimes they complain they don't even have facilities to do. It is disheartening that Parliament will give all these monies out, and it turns out belatedly in the Auditor General's report that these monies that were taken may not have been applied for the purpose for which they were given. So that aspect of parliamentary, I think Parliament should have, maybe if they haven't done now, allocate to yourself vehicles, other facilities that will ensure that you play your supervisory role and not just giving out the money. So within a year, the Parliament should, through the committee, go to the ground and find out whether if they gave GNPC 5 million for a start, they have even cleared the ground for the building. They said they are going to renovate an existing facility. You go there with appropriate, even independent valuers, surveyors, who may not be members of Parliament. So we know that they may not all have the expertise, but there's a huge pool of expertise out there. Go with them, let them assess at what stage they have gone to, how much of the money, so that if they are unable to, you can call in the rest of the money so that we keep it until there's a time that they need the money. Just giving monies out to state institutions and just sometimes forgetting about how they are implemented, creates problems for all of us. So I think that when you look at it this way, then to a large extent, the monies allocated may not be too maybe more than perhaps they may need, but my concern is whether or not they will apply it, and also at the same time change or fix the rates for the purchase of the data to be consistent with how much money we are giving them to get this data, so that we can also sell it. And also still insist, as is already in the law, that no investor has the right to transfer or to disclose any data he has purchased from us to another, as some of the companies you try to do, and we stop them. That is very important. And we also know that some of them can sit in their home country and still use facilities, technology to access. Yeah, we should have others to shut them, to block them also, so that they wouldn't come here purportedly just with their own information and data and say that, well, we have it. So there should be something so that they don't get this for free.
Very well. We need to take a break at this point. When we come back, we go straight into the Right to Information Bill and where it is currently on its way to be passed as law. You're watching New Day Saturday Edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is New Day Saturday Edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We're moving on to the last topic for today, which is the RTI bill. Yesterday, it was laid before Parliament, and that was in accordance with what the President said in his 61st and his speech at the 61st Independence Day celebration. So the coalition that is advocating for the passage started a countdown right from 6 March to make sure that by the close of 23rd, which was the last day for Parliament's sitting in this session, that would be done. And indeed it was done. But the question is, how do we, or where do we go from here? This isn't the first time that the RTI bill has been laid before Parliament. This has been going on for about 17 years. The advocacy to get it passed has been going on for about 17 years. I believe we're in the 18th year, and I was listening to one of the coalition leaders, and she says that the bill is practically an adult. If it was a human being, it could be voting at the next at the next elections, and that's how long this bill has been in Parliament for. Where do we go from here is the question. Mr. Opong.
Well, thank you very much. Honorable Obiamwa has favored me with a copy of the memorandum and for the bill itself. And I was just reading the first part, which was laid by the Honorable Attorney General. But actual fact, my own view on freedom of information may appear to be unconventional. In my view, I think it is not a necessity. But it is not a necessity. It is not that without the Right to Information Act, a person has no right to demand or require the government to provide information. And if we don't take care, even the Act will rather restrict a bit of the right we already have. There are a number of cases, at least are determined by the Human Rights Court, that we don't need right to information to be able to assert our right under the Constitution. For example, Article 21, before we can be given information by the state. In any case, the Constitution says that subject to laws that are consistent with democratic principles. So, of course, none of the rights under Chapter 5 is without a limitation. All of it are subjected to laws that are not inconsistent with the Constitution itself. It got to a time I thought authorities were rather using the non-passage of this bill in a way, if you apply the conspiracy theory, in a way to sink it into our minds that without that we cannot ask for relevant information from the state. I got to that point, honestly, because even in recent time, it has become it has become something that has been embedded. Yes, that without the right to information, we can't see. That has never been the case. We have, the Constitution is the supreme law. It has said that you are entitled to information, and the provision of which will itself not be inconsistent with the Constitution or any other law. So why should we let it seem as if without it? And so the Attorney General says it, and I agree. After referring to Article 21, all persons shall have the right to information subject to such qualifications and laws as are necessary in a democratic society. Goes on to list the benefits, and that says that this is just to enhance or give substance to that constitutional provision. For me, let us, whether this act is passed or not, tomorrow, or bill is passed or not, on Monday, if you need information from the state, require the state to provide it. And if the state is unable to justify its withholding or why it will not give it to you, go to court. The court have held already. And there have been some information that the state has been compelled to provide. The Gitmotu agreement. The Supreme Court said that, no, you cannot say that you are withholding it for national security. Bring it, let us determine whether in fact. And they said that, no, you have to produce this document, even though they said that it shouldn't be disclosed by the parties. But at least 2 citizens of Ghana who went to court and their lawyers became aware when the court said that bring the information. So it may take some time before it becomes law, even if it's passed. Between now and then, there should be no illusion that we have no such right to require the state to provide us information. That is the first thing. But, and I see elaborate provision. In fact, it contains a lot of provisions in it, and I think Parliament, in debating it, should always be mindful, respectfully, that this rather doesn't become a limitation on our existing right. Then it will be inconsistent with the Constitution. And Parliament can only be embarrassed by a decision of the Supreme Court, striking out such portions.
Because talking about the constraints that it may have, or it may end up giving in terms of, you know, the acquisition or access to information, I think the argument for the bill to be passed into law has been that, yes, the Constitution gives us that right, definitely, but perhaps when the act comes into being, would have the timelines within which we ask and expect a certain response, so that if we are not getting, then you know what steps to take and all of that. But yes, I get that argument too, that perhaps if you are so much restricted by timelines and all, then you could be running yourselves into some difficulties as well. But ultimately, I think we've started a path which we don't want to, you know, bring to a dead end. We would want to see it through. Mr. Joe Jackson, let me hear from you on this. Do you share
It's an interesting point.
the argument that yes?
And I think he's right. We've in a sense, the right to information has been put up as that silver bullet which will kill corruption. It cannot be.
Office of the Special Prosecutor.
Yeah, like the Office of the Special Prosecutor. It cannot be. I understand. But at the same time, it at least makes life easier if you go by some of his, especially to do with the response times. You see, if I go to court, I have to go to court and wait for the court to determine what should come and what shouldn't come at the pleasure of the court. But this mandates that once I follow the processes, the responses must come. So as much as I understand, and we should make sure we don't make it that the holy grail where once you reach there, everything is sorted out. I agree with you.
Minus touch.
Yes. But at the same time, we must admit that this should make life easier. My comment, though, is this. We've seen this before. So as much as we are, we know that our president is a man of his word.
A man in a hurry.
You see, when you've been bitten so many times by a snake.
When you see a worm.
Truly, I'm telling you, I'm not that excited. I will only be excited when in the next session, because nothing will happen in this session. In the next session, I wake up one day and it says, PAM! Obiama voted and it has been signed into... Because, you know, we've been here before. We've been in, out.
It's been in various forms,
and I must say this, right? My biggest disappointment was when it wasn't passed in the last parliament. That, for me, was the lowest point. And I hold the party MPP responsible for that. Because at that time, they were just playing politics one more time. But now, they are trying to redeem themselves. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not excited. We've been here before. It's gone, been withdrawn, taken back. We don't want you to be the ones to pass it. We want to be the ones to pass it. Let's wait small.
Honorable.
Cautious optimism.
Honorable Obiamwa. Mr. Joe Jackson says he blames the NPP that it wasn't passed, the RTI bill wasn't passed under the last parliament.
Fortunately, I was a member of the Constitutional Legal Committee in the first term I was in Parliament. That's under Professor Mills. So we went through this. I remember very well the then chairman, I won't mention his name, said that we even had to travel to UK, Canada, US to study how the system works, etc., before we can push this through. Obviously, by the end of the term, nothing had happened. Thankfully, the second term, that is immediate past term, when the bill was brought in, there were so many proposed amendments. It ended up over 100. That the prudent thing was to ask the Attorney General to just withdraw it and incorporate some of these things, and then so that it becomes a bit more tidy and comfortable for us. We went through everything. We had consideration stage, we got to a point, second consideration, probably third reading. But that was the election time that you could not even find members in Parliament. So on both sides, we didn't even have the quorum to be able to conclude this thing. And even after that, after elections, just before change of government, attempts were made to conclude this so that we have the right to information. It didn't work. As to blaming MPP, sometimes I want to balance it. So I agree that you want to balance it. But this is what happened. So I expect that with what we've gone through, especially the last term, this should have smooth sailing. This should be in a better way, help us conclude this matter.
You think this is it's captured everything
as much as possible. I'm still trying to compare the last one and this one.
Over the period,
there's a small procedural thing that we need to clear before people start making so much. You remember the president said he was hoping that this will pass at this meeting. It was a slip. He has even admitted it was a slip. He was even wondering after all these years in Parliament. The meeting ended yesterday. He wanted to say session, which would be the whole year. And then the term will be the 4 years.
All right.
So, but as much as possible, by yesterday, it had been late. Except that even delaying procedurally, you should have been gazetted for 14 days if you wanted it to go through the normal route. But if you bring out a certificate of urgency, you have every right to do it. Except that when you bring it, it will be referred to the committee. The committee will bring a report to come and convince the House that indeed
it
merits that. But we all seem to agree that this is so important and has very comprehensive provisions that we can't do it under certificate of urgency. So I'm hoping that when it gets to the committee, when the committee starts sitting, even whilst we are on recess, they will bring us a report when we come back in May that no, this should go through a normal thing, a 14 days gazetting, and then we look at the various aspects. As I said, there are critical things that people just, I saw our own media people in Parliament all wearing their T-shirts, pass the right information bill now. So I asked them, how many of you have looked at what we did the last time, which nearly passed? I want you to start interrogating that.
And that's where I want us to go.
Start interrogating that and compare it with this.
We've seen various forms of the RTI bill. Can you tell us quickly what has been the thread running through, which has remained maybe consistent, and what have been the matters that have been flagged for, further amendment or consideration?
Well,
so that what are the knotty areas and what are the perhaps the easy areas on which agreements are usually reached?
One critical area has been the exemption regime. What will be exempted from this whole access to information or right to it, and what should not be exempt. They talk about security reasons, safety reasons, economic reasons. Sometimes the exemption becomes so broad that you have to find a way of narrowing it. And after compromises, you agree that this is the level that we should agree. But if you allow me, the arrangement of the sections will tell you that, one, we have the exempt information. What will be information that you say that is privilege, contempt of court, disclosure of personal matters, all those things. How do we agree on those things? But you even end up setting up a whole right information commission. And the commission is required to look at what should be agreed upon and what they should manage and how
so
they
the commission will be
should
given the
settle.
discretion to determine that.
Yeah, they have. If you
when it's set up eventually.
yes, they have their objects and powers and functions and the promotion of right to information, etc. So when it comes to their powers and functions, they're going to then even settle disputes, arbitrate. I apply to this office for this information.
Existing commissions have been working.
I apply to this Ministry for Information. They are saying that under the act, I can't have access to the information, so I'm reporting to you, the commission, to intervene. The commission will try to settle it. If the commission doesn't settle it, or if the applicant is not satisfied, then he has to go to court.
But again, so the commission at that point would try to. Is that to say that the commission would at that point delay the jurisdiction of the court, or a person who is aggrieved can go to court even without going to the commission?
He has a right. Why not? Nobody can stop you from going to court.
Very well. But exactly. Which is an important thing for me.
Allow me, for instance, under 45 powers of the commission, the commission may resolve complaints through negotiation, conciliation, or mediation. Determine the need for form or type of investigation required for the determination of any matter. Make any determination, dismiss an application, a complaint, issue written orders, examine, reproduce. All those things will come under the commission.
Would that require payment of money for the information?
Some information you have to pay.
Right.
Some information you have to pay.
Very well.
Obviously, even though you are saying that under the Constitution, we are already entitled to this. I believe that if you can get it through this, there's no need going to court. Unless you are frustrated and because going to court is not an easy thing.
It's not. It will take time as well.
I heard it once.
Thank you. Let me move to Honorable George.
The cost, the time, everything.
Again, the fact that this has been on the table for almost 18 years, cannot be overlooked. And how do we ensure that it's fast-tracked? Because the issue about, going back and forth, trying to get it into a certain shape has been one of the reasons why we are at this stage where it's not been passed, aside other issues Mr. Jackson would like to call as the politicization of it all and all of that. But clearly, these are the issues, the back and forth of it, trying to make it, if you like, a near-perfect bill to be passed into law. Well, how do we ensure that we don't go back to issues that have already been discussed? Because it's moved from various parliaments into this current parliament.
You see, it depends on all of us. You see, luckily, in the last parliament, Obi will tell you I was principally in charge of the Right to Information Bill, and I went through the considerations, and he rightly put it. What was left to be done was virtually negligible. We had 1 or 2 or 3 funny things we could have done. We wanted to do winnowing and then bring it for the third reading, and then it's passed. But the politics at that time did not allow it to be passed. And I agree with Joe Jackson. At the time, the NPP were more interested in transitional issues because we were in transition. And they thought that, look, if we can, we'll pass it anyway. So why, so that is where it ended. Unfortunately, a new parliament has come, and by the rules, it has to start all over again. So it's been to parliament, it's been to cabinet. I haven't seen this one. It was only laid yesterday. So I'm sure I'll pick a copy and see because I got the inclination that there was some, I don't know if there's been some additions or whatever, modifications or whatever. But now that it's come to the House, I know that when the House reconvenes, I'm very clear in my mind that it will have to go for gazetting and then brought back. The committee will look at it. But like I keep saying, sometimes, look, civil society is also part of the problem. And let's not pretend that they are not. Why am I saying they are part of it? I have always, from day one, said that, look, let the right to information pass even as the work has been done in the past. And if you have issues, we could come for amendments from time to time. But some people also want a near-perfect document. And as for Parliament, it's like a law. It's like, it's like a lot of lawyers in one place. Particularly Constitutional Legal Committee. Every time there's somebody looking at one word and for him is a legal issue. A comma or something. Whatever. It comes to the House and people bring you, like he said, at the last, even though it has been in Parliament for a long time, 108 or so amendments. And if you know the consideration process, it's not funny. It is a very laborious, boring problem that even the media will abandon us when we are doing consideration because you are taking it letter by letter, word by word. Oh, no, the team has crossed here. No, this English doesn't read well. So it's a laborious problem. And once I sit there, you see me handling my phone because civil society is up there in the corridor and they are sending you text messages. No, we don't agree to what he's saying. This is the rendition. And then we are looking at, I mean, you go to committee meetings and they are telling you that, no, AU, there's an AU model, and an AU model, and this is what it should be. We think we want a Ghanaian model. So it's not, people give us the impression that it's something that you go and tell, and go. No, this is not one of the bills that you can take through like that. But I agree also with my brother Paul. Look, you see, this bill has pros and cons. I agree with Obi, I agree with Joe when they say that in some cases it's the easier option, where you write a letter to an organization and quickly within 21 days or 14 days you are giving. But you see, this bill also is structured in such a way that the organization can simply say that, you know, we've looked through our archives, we can't see this information, so try this other place. You have nothing.
They send you on a wild goose chase.
Yes. You see, and then the thorny issue is what will be raised. What are national security considerations? Or what kind of information do we say falls under national security? We've had the argument this morning about the American
and all those things,
corporation. So then again, if somebody doesn't want to give you the information, you come through the bill. The beautiful thing is that we consider this as national security and therefore will not give it to you.
But it could be subjected to.
Yeah, but you see, yes, you could be subjected to it, but then that means that you've gone through even a longer route. That's the whole point. Unlike other people who say that, look, this thing we want it, so let's go to court directly. And then the commission. If you look at the remit that has been given the commission, and I don't want to belabor any, but if you've gone through as a lawyer, gone to the Labour Commission before,
that was what I was asking. You know whether you could, you needed to go to the
these things. Is that a kind of thing we want to achieve with this bill? We should ask ourselves that question. Then I ask one very fundamental question: do we even have the facilities to store information in this country, where you have an information clearing house, maybe a major national repository, highly digitized, where you know that even the organization you are talking about can go into a system and retrieve information for you within the days that you are talking about? You go to government office and your file cannot be found. I'm doing a case, and for 6 weeks now, the docket that we used the week before cannot be found.
I have 2 weeks.
Good. So you see, we must have all these things at the back of our mind, even as we agitate that we want the right. As for right, Nigeria, other places have it too.
Yes.
Has it solved their problems? I am not saying that let's not have it. I've done too much work.
So let's pass it as it is, and then as we move on,
I've put in so much of my energy in this that I will be the happiest person to see it pass. At least it means that all the work I've done, traveling, Kofodia and all this, not gone in vain. But we shouldn't also raise the issue where we believe that once we have a right to information bill tomorrow morning, everything is perfecto. That should be at the back of our minds.
You see, and that goes to what I was going to say. See, a lot depends on our mindset. People are appointed by citizens of Ghana. They pay them by their tax. When you go for simple information, they think that they are to do you a favor, and they will not even give you the information. First of all, certain information should already be readily available. There's no reason why this bill shouldn't have been on the internet or wherever, a national data center that I can just access. And it will reduce the burden on Parliament. Because as you are saying, civil society will have to be in Parliament, perhaps get a copy before they text you. They could have done this long before. After all, you passed these laws for us. So why can't Parliament instead have a national database? I was even asking, do you even have a legal department?
So
you don't have a legal department.
There's an issue about how we manage information for retrieval, easy retrieval and all, aside the fact about whether the institution in itself would be even ready to give you that information. So you have two hurdles to jump.
What we are talking about is access to information.
Yes.
And let me give you a classic example. The EC was sued, district level elections. about they not waiting for the LI to mature.
Yeah. True.
Now, EC in his defense, their lawyer, said that they had relied on a certain law, LI 78, CI 78 rather. The Supreme Court in their ruling said that it doesn't exist.
When it did,
I
I remember that. Yeah.
They said that, so we had to take them on because we passed that CI. But the
then
Supreme Court itself didn't have access to the law.
But the other question
So the thing is, access is more than right.
When you pass these laws, do you even... That's what I'm saying. You need the legal department to liaise between the judiciary and parliament in particular.
You don't have a legal department.
The assembly press.
So there are certain building blocks we need to deal with
that
before
brings
that.
this thing. And they don't even allow
When
electronic version.
when you go there,
Clearly,
the
Mr.
old law that has
Jackson
been amended,
is not
some
going to
of
be the
them
Holy
are still
Grail.
there.
It's a
It's not.
It's a whole
It's
area.
not.
The evidence
Because
decree,
you need-
you go there, they will sell it to you.
There's a
Even
whole
though they
area.
have,
If
they have
you
been
are a judge,
amended.
Boga.
Now that they are changing.
If you're a judge in Boga, and
It's,
somebody
there are
appeals before you,
lots of issues
He may not
around
even
this,
have access to
but
the
of
law.
course we cannot, go into all of them. We don't have much time. We are limited by time.
My
We need
favorite musician
to
is
go.
being buried today. I mean, I think that may God give her a post of
Very
her soul.
yes,
But,
we do, yes, and our hearts
It's a
goes
shame
out to
that
the
she had to-
bereaved family. Yes,
Yes.
indeed. We hope everything goes on well. We have you in our thoughts and in our prayers. So, but let's say a very big thank you to our cherished viewers and listeners. We do appreciate you making time for us every Saturday morning. We thank you so much for your comments, your contributions, even though we're not able to read as much of them as we are supposed to, given our time constraint. And also a big thank you to the panelists, Mr. Joe Jackson, Mr. George Lowe, Mr. Yao Opon, and Mr. Obi Amwa. We'll be back same time, same place next week. And until then, have a good weekend and a productive week. Bye-bye.